Hi, I'm Jill Rupp from June Tailor. Make these 3 adorable little baby bibs for your special little one using our new pre-printed batting and quick and easy quilt as you go method. Let me show you how.
When you take the bibs out of the packaging, you're going to want to cut them apart into the 3 patterns, and you want to leave an extra 1/4 of an inch around each outside edge of the bib. So that will look like this. It's a rectangle on the bib and just a 1/4 of an inch extra of batting. Then what you're going to do is cut your backing 11 by 14, place it wrong side up, and on the wrong side of the batting you're going to spray with quilt basting spray so that we can adhere these 2 pieces together. So spray and put wrong sides of the batting to wrong sides of the fabric and secure. Next, we're going to sew all around the edge of the bib, just inside the blue marking. And it's good to use a contrasting color thread. In this case, we used red. And we're going to need this eventually to be our template when we're ready to cut our bib out. Next, we're going to cut our fabrics according to the instructions. The bibs are fairly easy. Most of our shapes are rectangles or squares, but one bib does have equilateral triangles. So I'm going to show you how to cut those. You start out by cutting a rectangle strip 6.5 by 2 3/4. If you have an equilateral triangle ruler, you can use that and it's fairly easy. These are 2 3/4 inch triangles, so we're just going to make sure that the edge of our ruler at 2 3/4 is at the bottom of the strip and the point is at the top. And then we'll go ahead and make our first cut, and then the ruler flips over like this. And again, we make sure that we're lining up the top point of the strip and the ruler, and we'll make our second cut, and that's how you get an equilateral triangle. You can also use the lines on your ruler. So for example, here I can use the 60-degree line by lining up the bottom edge of my strip on that 60-degree line, making sure it's right at the corner of my fabric strip. And I go ahead and make my first cut like that. And then you're going to flip to the other 60-degree line, which is here, and line the top point up, making sure that the bottom of the strip is on the 60-degree line. And you're going to make your second cut for your equilateral. And then the third way you can do this is by using the actual lines on your mat. So on my 60-degree line, I put my fabric, and then what you're going to do is make sure that the point of the strip is on one of the lines of the mat, as it is here. And we will make our first cut like this. And then we're simply going to turn this so that the cut edge that we just did is on the 60-degree line, with our next point at an up and down line on the mat, and cut again. And that's the third way you can make your equilateral triangles. Now the fun begins. Let's take piece number 1, as you see here, and our first equilateral triangle, and you're going to place it right inside the lines that say piece 1. If you want to pin this in place, you can. Next, take piece 2, right sides exactly together like this. And you're going to sew in a 1/4 inch seam allowance on here. And I'm going to show you that next. So here was my piecing, sewed in a 1/4 inch. Flip it open and finger press. Never use your iron, finger press it open. Next is piece 3. I'm going to take that, line it up right sides together with piece 2 like this, and I'm going to sew in a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I've got that done, and that's what this looks like. This is sewn here. Then we're going to continue on with piece 4 and 5. Piece 6, I would go right sides together like this and sew in a 1/4 inch, flip it open, and finger press those seam allowances open. Once I have my whole row of equilaterals done, I'm going to be on piece 10. That's a rectangle strip, right sides together like this. You can see it's lining up on the edges. I'm going to sew that in a 1/4 inch seam allowance, flip it down and finger press. Continue on in this same manner until everything is sewn. Our last piece is 13, which is this piece. We're going to lay it over the top, sew in a 1/4 inch, and we're going to flip that up and finger press that seam open. With the bib top complete, we're now going to pin the 4 corners. You want to pin on the inside of the template or red stitching line, so a fair distance from the corner, and that'll keep all these layers secure until we can cut the actual bib pattern out. So 1 pin in each corner. Then we're going to turn it over, and we are going to cut around the edge of the template or red stitching line on the outer edge, just outside that red stitching line, and that will look like this. Our bib shape is easily visible now. And then we're going to sew the hook and loop tape, 1 to the back and 1 to the front side. Turn our bib over, and we're ready for binding. Because of all the curves in the bib, we're going to need binding that is stretchy, so it has to be cut on the bias. You're going to need a total of 60 inches of binding, and it needs to be 1.5 inches wide. So cut on the diagonal of your fabric 1.5 inches, and then take all those strips, and to secure them, you're going to right sides together like this. You're going to line up the points at the edge of each 45 so that it creates somewhat of a square like this. And then you're going to actually sew from corner to corner, and that looks like this. This is our sewing line right here. You can go ahead and draw a line if it's easier for you. Sew right on that line. And then when you press that open, you can trim the seam, press it open. You've got your pieces of binding connected. And we want 60 inches of this total. With our 60-inch binding strip ready, we're actually going to cut this so we have a straight edge to begin. And we're going to press this under a 1/4 inch. So my roll of binding now looks like this with the edge pressed under. Now we're going to take right sides together, start about the middle on the bottom edge, and begin to sew in a 1/4 inch seam allowance over our fold, 1/4 inch, and as you sew, you're going to position your binding and continue sewing in a 1/4 inch seam allowance. The bias will make it very easy to sew and do those corners. And you're going to continue to sew all the way around the edge of your bib. That is going to look like this. So we've sewn our 1 inch beyond the start point, and I realize this looks kind of messy, but what we're going to do is turn this over to the back side, and our binding will start to actually form into place. So you get a really nice look to the binding using this method. So let me turn this over and show you how it's going to work. You're going to simply take the edge of the binding and fold it in half, and then fold it one more time over the edge of the bib. And I'm going to pin that in place. And keep going around the edge of the bib, folding in half and folding in half again. You can see how lovely this binding method works to go around the corners, and it looks just as lovely on front. Pin that in place, and then you're just going to hand whip stitch this back side down. When I turn it over to the front, this is how it looks.
Now our baby bib is complete, and we can move on to the other 2 designs. You can either buy fabrics or pull from your stash. That's the great thing about this project, because it doesn't take a lot of fabric. And each bib has a fairly large area where you can actually fussy cut if you have a favorite motif in any of your fabrics. We love these bright colors. Here's a few more examples of very brightly colored bibs that are perfect, and they hide some of the little food spills that's inevitable to happen with our little ones. And then this is one of my favorite easy to sew designs. And if you like pastels, it's just as fun and cute with lighter fabrics as well. And here's our equilateral design again. So enjoy making a special bib for your special little one.